the recording. Um, uh, Welcome everybody to the second part of the uh, annual Benin Voodoo Festival, which we are conducting via the internet on Zoom because of the pandemic. Otherwise, this is a huge festivity, royal heritage. King Dénis will be dancing, doing incantations and incantations, and celebrating with masquerades, and everything else as we should have it. But we've gotten to the part where this has taken another level, where we would like to have critical thinking and critical observation, some of which we did yesterday. And I want to thank everybody who was able to rise to the occasion yesterday. It was a really beautiful event. We had a thorough discussion about what voodooism is and the characteristics of voodooism, what it was used for, uh, what its intentions are, what the power behind it are. I mean, it's just an amazing discussion yesterday. So we move into the part two of this, which is how do we bring this culture to fruition? So now that we know what it is, we understand the basis behind it, what we intend to do is to develop a spiritual center, so to speak, a cultural center that promotes the understanding of voodooism. And this will be today's topic. So I want to welcome again Royal Heritage, my very dear brother, Sir King Dénis, to first lead us in prayer, as it should be, and then give a kind word towards that end. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And like I said earlier, yesterday, I thank you very much for all the time you have. You are busy and you making sure that you have to come to support the Festival Africa Voodoo USA. Thank you again, Dr. Wale, and thank all our guests, our brother and sister today, to come in for the conclusion of the Festival Africa Voodoo. On behalf of all the ancestors of Africa, all the Voodoo priests, all the king of Africa, give me the idea, give me the help, and give me all this thinking. I thank all them, and they be with me and give you guys prayer. Oh no, the home gonna be cool, and the family gonna be cool. Nobody gonna have any bad things happen to them. And anybody that have a little headache, they're gonna be gone. And this pandemic, in the name of all the mighty God and all the ancestors, gonna guide everybody, and we're gonna go through it. Thank you very much. And then for the program today, we're not going to. If anybody have any comment, you're gonna say anything you could say. But today we're gonna find a way how to move forward, because we have to work together and do something than talking. And his action is better, because we are in America and we know lots of. Some people have his PhD in street, some people have his PhD in village in Africa, and all this education, I think, is very important. If I tell you today, I'm not ashamed to present myself. But if I tell you today I never went to school, you won't believe me. I teach everything I'm telling you today. I never went to school I never went to school. So these days, I want people to know having your PhD is good, but also have a PhD in street in Africa, have a PhD in street Africa is always good. So I ask everybody, today is a special day, and everybody have to put their hand together, put their mind together, and form a committee to make sure that the people who born here, we have African born in America also, who don't know Africa. We have some people here who don't even know how to speak the language if born here. So the only way we can work together and use both knowledge, both intelligence from school, from out of school, from street together, is to create a center here where we are in America, center of culture, center of Voodoo, center of everything. When I say think of culture of center, when you enter that center, you know Africa. You have all information, everything you don't know before, you know that's what we going to do today. So I ask everybody welcome, and I want to know if I'll give the floor back to Dr. Wale. Thank you very much, Dr. Wale.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Welcome today. We have some remarkable people here today. We have the Honorable Alfonso Brooks here with us. We have Dr. Remy Alapo with us, and we have the Honorable Wei Kitoyi with us as well. Now, I know among all of us, because I have a sense of you know, of the capacity and ability that you have with you, His Royal Heritage, Sir King Dénis. I think that we will be able to do justice as to what might be entailed in the vision of moving this forward. And then if we're able to form consensus, even among us, I think we would have the quorum, and we would have done a good service to African development. So I want to mention a few things about what you said, because it's important for us to have a clarity of our position within ourselves in the society. And oftentimes we misunderstand the role of education. We often think it's a certification from some kind of industrial institutions. Yes, clearly because society is structured that way, but that's really not the entire purpose of education. And schools is not the only source of education or common sense for that matter. So many times we have met people who are so educated and went to the various top schools that still come out, you know, you know, they're missing many screws which are necessary to common sense. So I want us to be clear about what education is. I mean, take for instance, when it comes to wealth, most of the richest people in the world are not well educated. Most of the best presidents in the world were not, so to speak, you know, gone to all these great schools. Einstein, one of the wisest, noblest physicists in the world that the world had ever seen, really did not go to university. A lot of people did not know that. You know, FDR did not go to university. You know, Steve Jobs and even what's his name, Bill Gates. Both these guys did not go to university. They didn't finish. They had the opportunity. They had everything they wanted to you know, and could have probably done well at university, but they didn't have to. You see, so I just want us to be clear about what education is. And this is the same reason why Africans need to understand their roles. You see, when it comes to philosophy and the capacity of human understanding and narratives, we often borrow the idea of knowledge and intelligence from European pedagogy. And that has misled us tremendously, you see. And so now we are tracing the path back, and we find a lot of parallels. A lot of people are going way back into the Kemet ages, and some people even going before that time. Many scholars have came up with parallels, like, for instance, Socrates, you know, in European wisdom and European philosophy, or history of European philosophy, you would find Socrates as being the father of philosophy, you see, but it is European philosophy, right? Yes, of course, European philosophy, it appears to be human knowledge, right, in most cases, but this human knowledge is sourced from everywhere, and we found parallel even in the African, in the Yoruba culture, for instance, where we have Orumila. Orumila is parallel to Socrates, for instance. If you understand the concept of Ifa religion, the Ifa religion, as popular as it is, could interpret and does a whole lot of magnificent things, and the knowledge of it is even comparable to computers, where you have the zeros and the ones, and the same type of interpretation is what generates this knowledge, and it does it in some spiritual way. You have to familiarize yourself with it if you don't understand it, or if you haven't heard about it. But I recommend it because it's really fascinating to see the type of knowledge that is available to us uh, uh, as a whole of humanity, and how we all contribute to it from different parts, you see. So if you look at what's happening right now, right, and don't forget, the first people who spreaded this sense of religion were all these missionaries. Okay, there were all these missionaries and different religions, some with peace and some by force, you know. For instance, Islam is known to be acknowledged by force. Okay, and that can be interpreted in many languages. In the Yoruba culture, for instance, it's called Imale, which means Imolile, which means knowledge by force. Um, the, the Christians are different. They don't consider them. It's like, they consider them vagrants in that language. It's a really fascinating thing. But through the interpretation of our people, of our language, in our own tongue, in our own sense, and language is a communication of the soul. If you're able to grasp it and understand that underlying concept of vocalism, okay, of phonetics and so on and so forth. Anyway, so you begin to understand the purpose of advocacy and the outreach of how to bring knowledge to a group of people. You see, so I want to move us a little bit forward from what we did yesterday, and as Sir Dénis mentioned. So how do we begin to envision a creation of a representation of that African spirituality that is parallel to having to go to a Buddhist temple, maybe here in New York, maybe in Paris, London, wherever, or anywhere else in the world, right? Maybe a Hindu temple, and maybe a synagogue, and maybe a church or a mosque. Because all of these things are not quite ubiquitous. And the way it's run on the ground is the very ancient ways. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we think that just like every other religions have evolved and developed, maybe there is an opportunity for the African spirituality to begin to evolve as well, so that we can reach as many people who need and desire these alternatives, you see. And to do that, we need to put together some committee who are going to be working ardently on this. And it's a good thing to start with Benin. So that's one of the really the topics of today, and we want to be able to focus on that and see how we can begin to move this forward. So I believe one of our speakers is here, and I would like for our speakers to obviously shed some lights on this and see how we can do that. So, Sir Dénis, who is our next speaker today?
You check and see the doctor Daboya is there. He's coming.
I don't see him yet.
Okay.
I don't
So
see
give
him
the
yet.
floor to Alfonso to say something about that first.
Absolutely. I think the Honorable Alfonso will do great justice to that topic on the table. You have the floor.
I'm sorry. You made me laugh so much my headset fell out. My apologies.
Okay.
Trying to frame my thought. How do we advance? I think we must first have the understanding what is community, because I think this is the biggest part of a separation that exists amongst us right now, is we lack the true interpretation of what community is. In order for us to advance together as a collective, we have to first understand what is community, what are we truly building, and why are we building it. I believe in the philosophy of backing into the deal. We must first see what the end looks like in order for us to work towards it. So if we building a community center for spiritual awareness, whether in Benin or here in the US, we building a community. That's the reason. The center is just the brick and mortar. You understand? As in biblical days, the temple and the church is not the establishment. You are the temple. You understand? That is just an outer projection. So whatever edifice that we seek to build must build within a foundation of community. So what is our community and where is our community? How do we use the term community? What does it signify? So in asking that question, we must first know what that looks like and what that is before we can even begin the conversation. If we were to go to angel investor, and say we want find funding to build a community center for spiritual enlightenment in Benin or in Brooklyn, wherever, right? Their first question they're going to ask is, okay, why? You understand? And for who? We can't say Africans. It's too wide. You understand? So we must have a straight, a concise description. Okay, we're targeting this particular niche audience right now with the hopes of it expanding to XYZ. So I put the question back to the forum. What is our community? What is this community that we're building? What does it look like? And what are the 10 steps, the 10-point program for this community that we're building? What is it? Is it spiritual community, education community, party community, a sports community? What is it? And if you use the word spiritual, what does that look like? What are we going to teach the people at this community? What are the takeaways that we're going to have say every way? What are the measurable things that we're going to use at this particular establishment? For lack of a better term. I apologize.
I love it. See, you did that and you're so satisfied because you knew what you did.
I apologize.
That's quite okay. That's quite okay. And it would be unfair for me to answer that because I'm too well prepared for that. So I'm going to move that question to I know someone who could do a good justice to that.
Okay.
But I also will come back to you, Sir Dénis. I know you have lots to say on this. So, but hold on a minute. Allow me to welcome Dr. Remy Alako, who is a powerhouse, a practitioner, and a brilliant scholar on this subject. To help us with this question that you've posted. So Dr. Remy, kindly unmute and let's hear from you. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be on this program. And while Mr. Alfonso was speaking, I almost unmuted myself to actually chime into his conversation. And, exactly what I was thinking, that once he finished speaking, I was going to, request to speak. I've had this conversation many times with, other scholars as to what exactly would be, an African diaspora community. You know, Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, the African continent is so vast and diverse that it's very hard, even in one country, to pinpoint a specific religion or a specific tradition for people to come together and practice. You don't want to override one spiritual concept over the other, or one culture over another. And here in the diaspora, who exactly would we consider an African? Because last year was the 400th anniversary of the Year of Return, and many people of African descent actually returned home to Africa, where places like Ghana, they were given citizenship and other traditional titles and things like that. So not only even in Ghana, in many places where people have been going, visiting the continent over time. And here, if you find, especially in New York City, where, I don't know where the rest of you are located, but I'm here in New York City, there are many practitioners of traditional African religion all over the place. There are many centers, there are many groups all over the place. And believe it or not, most of these places are patronized not even heavily by Africans, coming from the continent, but the, descendants of Africans who came either through the transatlantic slave trade or, one way or the other, but not, the regular you and I of brain drain Africans who were looking for economic opportunities or something like that. So many of us actually don't visit or practice most of our African traditional religion, which is a shame, thanks to colonialism, which wiped off, the confidence, and the consciousness of the Black mind, and that only does not resonate in the diaspora, where people were stripped of their dignity and identity, and their thinking. It also, all over Africa, we're just beginning. If you find, many young people now are beginning to reclaim their identity, which is, I would say it's a shame, but it's better late than never. Here in New York City, there's so many, many practitioners of, the Ifa religion, but believe it or not, they're not even, you know, they're not even like Yoruba, coming directly from Nigeria. These are descendants of Africans who were here or who were brought here as slaves. So most of these religions that you find people practicing, thanks to those descendants who are trying to reclaim, their African consciousness, their African traditional practices. We as Africans need to come together and find a way that we can unite in teaching and promoting this culture. And I thank Sir Dénis. I know 2 years ago when we first met, you invited me to your ceremony, and you promised me. I'm still waiting. I'm looking for the day when we're going to meet face to face, because what you told me I will never forget. You said, we were we were at dinner, and then you said, you can do some incantation with raw food in the middle of the table, and the food will start cooking by itself, and everybody will just start eating. I almost like ran away, almost like fled from the table. I was like, no, you're kidding me. I said, can you do it right now where we are? Like, wait, let me like move away first, because even I myself, I was afraid, But these are some of the powers, some of the spirituality, some of the concepts, some of the traditions, some of the teachings that, makes the African the African. Dr. Wale said earlier that, the Ifa tradition is comparable to, astronomy or something like that. Why is it that we're suffering spiritually in Africa and have adopted so many Western religion, but we have a problem of identity crisis and confidence in reclaiming or even showcasing our own cultural practices? If you go anywhere, and you ask anyone, oh, do you practice, XYZ African traditional religion? They will say, God forbid, that is evil, this on that, until we start understanding that nothing about us is evil. And maybe there were some archaic ways of, practicing these religions. We can modernize them to fit the current trend of the society. Maybe there were some blood sacrifices or human sacrifices or something like that. We can find other ways. We can have scholars to research to find different ways of, continuing some of these practices, but using different methodology. After all, medicine and science has changed over time, because of innovation. So why can't we have innovation in African traditional practices? So this is, my 2 cents to the story, but I thank you for, having me on this forum.
Thank you very much. Where is it, Dr. Wale?
You're next. I want to, so, I mean, obviously, Dr. Remy really set the stage here, so you are on the spot. I want to know how you can cook raw food as well. I mean, I know how to eat it raw, but if you can make it cook by itself, that could save us a lot of gas money. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I told him. I said, climate change, fossil fuel, cutting of wood and everything,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially when we go camping. But I got to tell you, Dr. Remy, I have witnessed a lot of phenomenology in my life. And I'm not quick to be fooled even by magicians, but I've seen great mysticisms, and we know it exists where it does. Some of it is even floating around the social media. I'll be very glad to share them with you. There's some phenomenal things that's going on, but this is not about that. Because that's what people expect. They want you to turn water into wine. Why are we asking Christians to turn water into wine? So, but because that's not the point. And we talked about it yesterday. I want us to separate the meaning of religion and the meaning of spirituality to understand the differences. You see, so religion is something that is external, but you are meant to interiorize. It's very important to understand that. Okay, so something that comes to want to cultivate your being, your habits, your behavior, etc. And structure your power for a purpose. It's very, very important. Okay, and oh, sorry, I have when somebody's coming in, you hear this beep, and I'm monitoring this. So you understand the idea of that, and spirituality is something that happens inside of you, and you project it from your within to some externalities, some external affairs. So it's really important to understand this difference. And because it occurs inside of you, that power is limitless and cannot really be structured or be controlled or be controlled here by you or whatever guys you have. It cannot be limited is what I'm trying to say. You understand what I'm saying? It's like it's a really interesting thing, and that's why it's dangerous. That's
Can
why.
I chime in? Can I chime in on what you said there? So, Dr. Remy Alapo said something very interesting, which he spoke on innovation. And this is something that I wrestle with and trying to have our people understand. We are the most innovative people on the planet, bar none. I mean, if we go back to the Dogon people, they're still trying to understand the depth of their overstanding. If you study the depth of the high priestess and high priestesses and their level of spirituality, to understand the stars, the planets, the earths, the herbs. So I don't think innovation is the correct term for us to use as it relates to our progression in building our community or having to change anything. I think what needs to happen to lead off where we left yesterday, right, is we need to be able to have honest discussion to carry the torch forward. There is not enough discussion being had between the elders and the youth to teach those lessons forward. The fireside chats need to come back. If the fireside is now on social media, there needs to be groups that are safe spaces, that are free spaces that we can share this information. And I don't believe in social media, I just use as an example, but we need to create, when you speak of a community, this is my concept of community. Do we have a safe space that we can go to say, you know what, on Mondays we have King Atchadé, on Tuesdays we have Dr. Wale, on Wednesdays we have Dr. Alapo, and do we have these things, and they each have an agenda, right? That is building because they've all spoken to each other. So there's a curriculum to re-educate and repopulate the thought processes of us in the diaspora to the authenticity of who we are as a people. This is why I think that it's not being done. Forget the social construct in education. And I mean, when I'll speak about it later, but whenever I'm busy creating an African event that we do each year, right? I put a lot of thought into the speakers that I'm bringing. And I will be going after speakers for months on end, but I have a concept, you know, like last year, our discussion was love is the way forward. See, people always want me to come in. I'm a revolutionary. People always want me to come all gung-ho, you fight the power, but it's not that. It's not about fighting the power. It's about understanding where our power lies. Our power lies in love. That's what has kept us and allowed us to persevere this far along. So how do we use that love now to pass that message on to enough people that it can actually grow organically? And these are the things that I think that is not being done. I mean, for this year, our discussion is a new way of being. When I spoke to Professor Lumumba and to understand that he, you know, it's not where he's at, but I've listened to so many of his talks, right? So I have an understanding. He don't say that word, a new way of being, but he's actually reiterating what the elders said in a way now that the youth today can understand it. He has never had a discussion without incorporating the elders in his discussion. And these are the things that I think is not being done enough here in the diaspora, in my humble opinion.
Thank you. So I think what you just said even supports what Dr. Remy said. And it's important to understand that, because when we are talking about innovation, it's really, especially in the cultural realm, it's really applying some sense of new narratives to old wisdoms. And we've always said that. So, so it's important for us to understand, and that's very necessary. This is something, what you're talking about, something we've been grappling with for a long, long time. And that's the reason why we have established the Royal Institute of Global African Cultures and Traditions. Okay, so the role that Benin plays in this is very vital. And what we are doing is, I mean, how do we reach out to traditions? How do we get a sense of culture? So the kings, the royal houses are the custodians of culture. They have kept oral histories of their culture and their traditions since of age. And they have this record one way or the other. They have it even much better and more authentic than whatever is kept in the Library of Congress or any other library that exists. We as Africans know that. Okay, so we know that knowledge is not lost. And as a matter of fact, in the African concept, we believe that knowledge cannot be lost. That's the fascinating thing, you see. So through this, Sir Dénis has took it upon his own duty, not only as a citizen or a child, but as a responsibility to reach out to most of the kings in Benin in understanding their capacity, their interest, and how we can begin to make sense of what Benin contributes to the African concept. You see, so when you see what we're doing, you'll be very pleased because we have worked very, very hard, very, very hard. You'll be very pleased. I have great respect of Professor Lumumba and many. I know so many of these guys. Many of them are brilliant people. They have, they speak with rigor. They are amazing. But to me, honestly, I just want solutions because we don't have time for rhetorics. So if you're not going to come and talk about solutions, I'm not willing to listen to you. And that's one of the reasons we had a fight yesterday. I can't tell, I don't want somebody who's going to tell me about the problem. We know the problem. We feel the problem in our bones. We feel it when we breathe the air. We know that every one of us born yesterday knows the problem. My daughter's
100%.
We know the problem. You see what I mean? So we've reached the stage where we need to figure out how we grapple, how we position ourselves, and who and where, all of those things. So what Sir Dénis is bringing to the table is immensely important, and I want us to have a good understanding of it and see how, because this is about us. This is how it considers, and this is where it starts. You see, there are many elements that brings a community together, that describes a community and serves a community. But one of the mistakes that many of our people have been doing over the years, we all cry unity, unity, unity. We want unity, but we have no binding factors. You see, we don't even agree on religion. We don't even, we don't even agree on basic ice cream. You know what I mean? So it's a thing. That we have to understand that we need to develop these institutions that are binding. Those are the things. Obviously, religion oftentimes divides us. And obviously, when we push this initiative forward, it's going to further divide us, right? But we hope that it brings reason, that this is a good division. In a division in the sense that doesn't really change our values, but help us even bring it. That means we have to be so strategic about it and be accommodating of those who have been bred in different directions of religions around the world. And I can tell you, many of our people are becoming Buddhists. Many of them want to be Hebrews today. Many of them want to be this and they want to be that. So this is why this is really a huge responsibility for us. And we need all hands on the deck, and we need to figure out how. So I want to ask Sir Dénis now to chime in on this particular discussion on how we see this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. I want to thank everybody, and especially Alfonso and Dr. Wale. Before I say anything, I want to give one little bit example of my experience. I went to Benin and tried to go to Togo, Nigeria, and then focus on every priest, every king of Benin. When I go to everybody, some people are Muslim, some people are Christian, some people are different kind of religion, but all of them accept and applaud my idea. What I learned is the solution. I don't want to talk about what to pass anymore. I want to raise every little things about personal, religion, all this stuff, how we can move forward. When I go to the village, I see the kids look at me. When they tell them that I'm from America, I spent more than 30 years in America, and I speak the native language, doing some dancing. Some of them went to school over there. They don't even speak our native language correctly. For them to see me come and speak, they went crazy. So I see that there is a little problem of communication and culture. So when I come to America here, I teach in boy and girl high school in New York. I go to school, I do a lecture demonstration, teaching a Black American kid, white American kid about where I came from. Some of the kids say they want to be like me. Some of the kids say, oh, in Africa, they say that you sleep in a tree. I say, no, I prove to them we don't sleep in a tree. When it comes to the spirituality they're talking about, if the first person come from Africa, I mean, all this religion, actually some of them is stolen from the African. We have, when we talking about, the lady talk about some spiritual things, I learned some trick, I learned some tradition. I went to Haiti. We worked together, we put the fire of oil in the fire was boiling, the oil was boiling, and I have special herb from Benin, and I can just take cold water and put inside. You put your hand inside that thing and put your hand inside the boiling oil, it's not gonna burn. It's just some simple that we have. We have some herb, you can take it, somebody can have a very bad stomach, you put a little bit and a cure. You don't have to go to hospital. You have some, there's a lot of things that we have as African. So when I put this thing out and talk about the culture center, stuff like that, the community is us. The community is Alfonso, is Dr. Wale, is us. What can we do? On that center, what we're gonna do, we're just gonna show them who we are. And our kids are gonna love, even America here, the American kid, Black kid here, the African. That's not different. They can go and see where they really come from. Like the Jewish people, they have the temple here, they have all these things here. Some Jews, they born here at a certain age, they go to Africa. But what we need to work together and forget about what they're talking about, the other religion, and put our African higher, different level. Before I even close it up, I will give I will take you guys one little point I see in Haiti. When I was in Haiti, Haiti is African, but technically they say it's not African. You see the tradition people have there, they don't make it no different. They don't say we just Haitian. They say they're African. They don't hide it. They say they're African. We have some African Americans who say they're African. For me, I already have a solution. The solution for me is to call Alfonso as my younger brother or older brother, all the people as my brother, and we sit down and bring ideas together and work together and move forward. For me, that's the community. Thank you.
Sir Dennis, I agree with you. I also lived in Haiti for 2 years. And the entire time I was there, I was always shocked every day. It was just as if I was somewhere in Africa. I couldn't even believe it. The movement, the expression, the culture, everything resonated. A people that, I don't know, it's as if you carved somewhere in Africa and just transplanted it in Haiti, even, like carrying goods on the head or the expressions. They were, every expression they were making, every one of those expressions, I understood even without really knowing the language. And if you ask them where they were from, automatically you will hear from Africa. There's no shame about Haitians actually acknowledging their ancestry. So I wanted to chime that in. Also, some of the food, you'll be very surprised. Even the names of some of the foods, the ingredients, it's as if you were back home in Africa. And I promised myself, I said, anytime that I'm homesick, if I don't have enough money to go to Nigeria, I'll just buy a plane ticket and go to Haiti for a few weeks and then come back to New York.
Thank you.
So thank you. Yes.
Thank you, both of you. I want you to hold that thought on Haiti because I believe we have some questions about that. And I also want us to, and it's also very connected to this aspiration now, because many parts of the diaspora have tried to establish some kind of temple to serve, to worship, to observe the particular African spirituality as it has developed or evolved in the diaspora. Much of it is also actually developing on the ground right now in Africa. So before we move further in that direction, I want us to listen to Mr. Gbe Kitoyi, who seems to have something really interesting to say. Are you willing to speak, and are you able to come and speak, Mr. Kitoyi? If you are, please unmute and let's hear from you. You mentioned something about Haiti before, and I want to hear a little bit more about it. See if we can connect it to what's going on right now. Are you? Mr. Kitoyi?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you. Please speak.
Thank you so much for the honor. I wasn't prepared for this, but I really appreciate it. What I was saying about Haiti is that we are all the same, like African, Haitian, people, Black people in Brazil, all over the world. We all share the same. We have something in common. So no matter how far away we go from each other, we are always gonna have that together. We are always gonna have it, and that is our culture. That is what is holding us together, and that is also characterized by love. No matter what happens, we know that we are gonna be there for each other, and that is part of what is keeping us together and keeping us alive, no matter what. Thank you all. I'm learning a lot from this call, and it makes me really happy to see brilliant minds coming together about a cause as important as African culture. And I think if we can promote this even by publishing, by writing about African mythology, to make our culture known by ourselves, like by our culture, by our kids, by our friends, by people around us. That's all, for me, that's what matters. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's I'm very glad to hear from you, and thanks for your contribution. It makes perfect sense, and it's very encouraging to the cause. Thank you. So, as we've said before, this obviously has to do with how well we are able to serve the community. I want to go back to that, serve the community, and which means that we, first of all, in my organization, African Views, one of the things that we do well is creating taxonomy for the community, such as understanding the community's resources and the community's challenges. So obviously, we know much of the challenges that exist in many of the communities. As a matter of fact, in New Jersey, for instance, there was a bill called the Amistad Act. The Amistad Act was passed after a long struggle. The Amistad Act was to teach African history in the schools in New Jersey, from childhood education, etc. You cannot imagine how important that is, because if we look at the challenges that we have in our community, it's really enormous. It's really enormous, especially the sense of much of what needs to be learned, and therefore, what we are injecting to the communities is a very necessary spiritual development that we know that will fill a void which remains unsatisfied by either existing religions, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. I've seen videos of many people, African people doing Buddhism, chanting seriously. I mean, like a church. I've never seen that before, but I was able, it was sent to me by a Mongolian Dalai. I was like, I can't believe this. So the challenges is there. The challenges are there for our people. And we need to find a way to attract them, communicate with them. We have resources to deploy. We have enough curriculum materials. We have a structured pedagogy that we can deploy. I mean, we hardly know anything about each other. And in each culture, each African culture that exists anywhere in the world, which is what we've been focusing on. Just imagine all of that put together with the wisdom from each of these existing cultures and ethnic groups or clans and so on and so forth, each with his heroes and the stories. I mean, we have a mythology book that is never, that's going to be beyond any epic ever before. You know, we know that. We know how to write, we know how to source this information. There are lots of people who are currently working on it. What we are doing is putting an authority behind it, a necessary authority. So this book is not just some writer who is prolific and writes of this thing. We want it to come from the blessing and the approval of the royal entities behind it. That would give it the authority, and that would give it the necessary vigor that it needs in order to play the role that we intended to play in the world. So I am very excited to be African. And as a matter of fact, I'm excited for all African people for what lies ahead for us. I know we have little challenges here and there. We got a Twiddler rambling. We got the police kneeling on our necks and so on and so forth, because of course they have a sense of what's coming. So I am excited for us. I'm excited for us, and I want every one of us to feel that way, because we only just, I mean, we've just been waiting for everybody. Show us what you got. And they've all shown their cards except us. We just don't know yet what's coming. So I want us to have that sense of direction and feel even more confident in ourselves. So I want to go back to Dr. Remy to chime in on this one. I'm going to ask some few questions with some of our speakers. I know Fitzgerald has so much to say. He spoke about Izuli Danto, who I know, and I don't know if he has a question about it, but I'd like to hear from him because it makes for a very good subject. And we'll also like to hear from Dr. Antoine, as well as Mr. Balewa. So, but Dr. Remy, please chime in a little bit more. Thank you. Are you able to? Dr. Remy? Okay, if you are not able to, I will ask Brother Alfonso to fill that void for us for a moment, because if you're prepared, are you able to say something before we go to some questions? Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Alfonso. If Dr. Remy is not available.
Oh, you're waiting on me? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to Dr. Remy. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about it.
What do you think?
I had a thought with something you just said, and something our people must remember, right, is that when we think of birth and we think of the process of birth and the process of the male and the female connection of birth, right, that the disruption that happens to bring forth the joy, we have to really keep this into all considerations to life, that there's a say, it's inevitable our rise. It's inevitable our mighty time to come. And yes, you just mentioned it, that the fear of their knowing what is coming is they're doing their darndest to prevent it. And I tell my friends all the time that they will not give this up willingly. They will burn this stuff down before they turn it over to us. We just have to be conscious of that in our mind and keep doing the work. We have to keep pressing, to the floor, and once again, passing the torch along. Keep sharing the information and keep empowering each other. It's the only way we can advance. Understand? Advancement is a collective effort, individual to build a collective. You understand? Too many people. I posted this morning an old Mandela clip where a Ted Koppel, they tried to box him in because he supported Yasser Arafat and Fidel and all of them. And he said specifically, clearly, your enemies are not my enemies. We must understand that, you know what I mean? So these people, the other side, they try to box you in and guilt you, and they box all us in together, right? We're the only ones that want to box ourselves together. And we need to learn to do that, to remember the power that we are. We're over 2.4 billion people globally. That's something to be said for a planet that's less than 8 billion people. There's no reason we should not be in the position that we're in if we came together and understand the value of our people collectively. That's my 2 cents.
It's a good investment.
Indeed.
You know, I know that video from Mandela with Ted Koppel. Oh man, that was a really funny video,
Yeah.
and sad. It's a very emotional video because it was his first outing. You see,
Outing, yeah.
So-
That's what they do. They try to attack you. I mean, this is their design. Their design is always to be attack them against. Don't give them a chance to get up. Keep their foot on their neck.
I tell you that video is supposed to be a class in politics.
Absolutely.
It's there's so much in it, so
powerful.
much. Amazing.
And you see how he remained so composed. Mandela was so composed, and he was just
really. It was an amazing. You have to look at the entirety. It is an amazing video.
Yeah.
Because you will see how skillfully a politician that man was. It was just a born politician, and he saved not only himself but also the future of the country in many ways. Just in that video alone.
Correct.
From many sides.
Correct.
From all the sides, and yet being able to navigate it. I think it was a fantastic video. I'm so glad that you mentioned it, and I'm happy that you share that inclination. Dr. Remy, you seems to be back. We wanted to.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the question. I zoomed off briefly. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. So before, I would like you to address something that I'm going to ask Fitzgerald Botemp right now. I think Fitzgerald is really, he has a question, right? Do you have a question or a comment? You don't know? Fitzgerald, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you today?
I'm all right.
It was very good to have you yesterday, and you posted some very interesting questions yesterday, and you've been sharing some very interesting comments today. I wanted to know if you want to, are you okay? If you want to ask a question today or have a comment, a bunch of related to what you're talking about, and since you are from Haiti, I want to be able to place this next question around Haiti, but I want to hear from you first, okay?
Yes. So, pretty much, the way I want to start with this, right? I want to start by saying that this program is very good, and it's very sad to me that today's the last day, and then I really wish that you guys have this program. You guys make this a every weekend thing.
Yeah.
I wish you guys can do that. Because I can learn a lot from this program. There's a lot I can learn from this program, and there's a lot other people can learn from this program as well. And also too, from what the lady was saying, Oluremi, Alapo, right? From what she was saying earlier, yes, like me being raised in a Christian home, right? Most Haitians I grew up with, most of them, a lot of them, they'll tell you that they French, they're just like French. They're basically Haitian culture come from France, and Haitians are like how would I say this again? They're like they're the origin of France. That's what they were said. Now, I'm trying to learn more about Haitian voodoo, right? Although like my family, they're doing everything they can to stop me, right? They even trying to control where I go when I go to Haiti. So to make sure that I don't go anywhere where there's voodoo, but I'm still trying to find a way to learn. Also, too, I was talking to you earlier about Esili Donto. There's this popular Haitian voodoo priest. Most Haitians know him. They call Bilolo Congo. Bilolo Congo, very popular. And then he teach me like a lot about Haiti. That the story they said about the Haitian Revolution. They told a story about how like they cut the neck of the pig, right? And then they drank the blood of the pig, and that's when the Loires caught the Haitians and they went and attacked the French slave masters. Bilolo Congo that said that story was written by white people, and that's not true. It's not true because what really happened was they did a voodoo ceremony and there was a sacrifice where they cut the neck of a white man. They did it so they can actually, the slaves did it so they can actually, the voodoo priest did it, right? To actually show the slaves that the same way like you as a black man can die and can bleed, the white man can die and bleed too. And that's when the slave basically got hyped up and went and attacked the masters. They said another story too in the Haitian Revolution where they said that like the only reason why the Haitians won the revolution is because the English army blocked the shore so more French troops wouldn't come to Haiti. That's not true because a white army wouldn't go against another white army for black people. So that's not true.
Okay. So I think we got your point. If there's anything else you want to say, if you can say within 20 seconds, that'll be great. Just to conclude your thoughts. But we get your point. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty much. So
okay. No, I think it's, this is very generic that most people are very concerned and fearful of what voodoo is.
Yes.
Of course. So it's definitely good, I would say, for your parents and kids to want to protect you. But, as you become, as you learn to become yourself, you get to look at all the varieties and all the options. And, African spirituality is certainly one of the ones that you should consider just for your own self-development, and be able to see what other plays and what role they play, and what African spirituality might play as well. So, again, the task is always on our side, but I just want to for the fetish things that were talked about before. I think it's important for us to understand that in war times, let's mute our microphone if we're not speaking. Let's mute our microphone when we're not speaking. So just really to help out with this, war is a terrible thing. It does not help anyone. They say all's fair in love and war. In war, it's really terrible. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of stuff. People die equally from all aisles. We all witnessed when the president of Iraq was hanged. And his head came off. I mean, on TV. How do we reconcile that? We've seen now somebody just knelt on somebody else's neck, and dispassionately, and the person expired. We saw it in our eyes how his life expired on TV. And we've all witnessed where a very fed up fellow was running around with pistol, and he went to officers in their car and he shot them point blank. We've seen many things. We've seen kids took guns and walk on the street and shut up people because of what it's in their head. So again, these are the things that we are trying to build reasons to. So no need to belabor them. Our concern here is how to really move this forward. So in Haiti, for instance, they have temples that already exist for voodoo. I know there are temples that exist for different African spirituality in Cuba and in Brazil. I've been to those in Cuba and in Brazil, but I know they exist in many parts of the world. As a matter of fact, many African versions of Christianity is so complex, and there's so many of them that much of it is somehow finding its way back to the African roots and the African culture. So you have a term of an African Christianity, as a matter of fact. I'll tell you a quick joke about that. While I was growing up in Vienna in the 80s, there was this African church called Celestial Church. It's a very big church today around the world, but then it was in its advent. And we were kids in Vienna, and Vienna is a very European country, European city in Austria. And we had this beautiful apartment with lots of rooms. And Vienna gets really cold in winter, that we could not really heat up all these rooms, you see. So we started to figure out how we're going to keep the apartment warm. And one of our friends used to practice with the Celestial Church in Africa, and he had his nice garb with him, his uniform. And he showed it to us once, and I started to think. I said, oh, I think we got something with this. You know, this is good. I think, you know, maybe we could start a church. And the more people will come, we could charge gate fee. I didn't know how church operates in the sense of gate fee. I mean, I went to Catholic school. They didn't. I don't know, but I was thinking like discotheque, which I'm somewhat familiar with. Maybe we could charge them gate fee, and so he said, no, it doesn't work that way. You know, like, okay, but you know, we gotta like make money from it. But at least if we bring them in the apartment, we'll keep the apartment warm. They at least that would keep the apartment. This was really funny, kids thinking at around that time. But you know what? We went through with it. We started this church, and this was we found out this was the first celestial church in Europe hemisphere. As a matter of fact, anywhere outside of Africa. This was really funny, and this church now has. I mean, this is like the biggest African church, other than the new ones, the mega on steroid churches that they have today. But that tells you that much of these things can happen by chance. And you know, but the fact of the matter is there's a movement behind it. And as I mentioned before, we're doing some of these things here that we can use to push, but we're working on those. So it is important, and the question will come. The existing temples, churches, groups that are practicing here, what role will they play? How can they support this? What can we do, if at all, to unify it? So what we're talking about here is standardization. Now, standardization is really incredibly important. Okay, it's important because it allows us to first to communicate with ourselves and say, oh, these are the standards, this is what we want to adhere to, these are the values and things like that, right? And we got to agree with that, and so on and so forth. So this is why really we think the authority of the royal elders be very critical. But still, we need to do this, and of course, there's got to be some economic strength behind it, so as to help push this forward, you see, to give it some bases. And all of those things are going to be very challenging, you see. But many of these churches or temples for African spirituality already exist. I'm sure, Dr. Remy, you know some of them. That's what I wanted you to speak about, especially in comparisons to the temples that are already here. But what we're looking for is not just the temple, but a complete cultural center that focuses on African development, African spirituality in dances, or African spiritual development, or African heritage development, you see. Obviously, they just finished, or maybe they haven't, I know they're working very hard on the African Museum in Harlem, which everybody expects to be some sense of Pan-African cultural or art center, so to speak. We want to see that. I've met the people behind it. I think they're very good people. We should all support them. But we need as many as possible. Just keep in mind, every single street in the Western Hemisphere, street, alley, everything has a church or a synagogue or some kind of mosque. There are more churches than schools in communities. There are more churches than hospitals in communities. Now, why is that? So it's because people needed to be centered and follow and adhere to particular principles. This is important. That the principles that is established in the mainstream is really not quite favorable to our own spiritual development as African people. And we know this. We look for alternatives, but we are very afraid. And that's a natural response, that we are afraid. We'd be crazy if we weren't. We'd be inhuman if we weren't, to be honest with you. So this process of changing this fear into hope and joy is really the task and the burden that we as committed individuals must carry, you see. So Dr. Remy, I want you to please help us understand the concept of the temples that already are in existence here, and how those, whether they are approachable, and if so, how, the concept of bringing standardizations and creating some kind of networking support of what's new and what's already existing, and find some consensus and collaboration there. I'm sure you understand me. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Wale. The success of many of the churches and places of worship that exist, outside of Africa currently, for example, Dr. Wale mentioned the Celestial Church of Christ, and the success of the church in spreading outside of the continent of Africa is because the mode of worship and some of the practices actually incorporate African tradition. So it's a it's a welcoming environment where those who are looking to maybe incorporate maybe some sort of elements of Christianity and practice of African tradition, you will find that a lot in the Celestial Church of Christ, also known as CCC. And another church that is closely related to the Celestial Church of Christ is the Cherubim and Seraphim Church. As a matter of fact, when that was founded, it was founded on the premise that it would incorporate, most of the practices would incorporate elements of African culture, African spirituality, African tradition. So this was, coming out of, I would say, maybe a lot of drawbacks of, loss of identity, loss of cultural practices or tradition, or loss of heritage, coming out of colonialism, or the attempt to reclaim maybe that African, standardization, if at all we may get there soon if we don't, come together at one point or the other. But these churches are actually fast and widespreading, not only to Africans, but people of African descent, those in the diaspora, others who are looking to learn about African culture and practices. They tend to find that these churches don't discriminate. There are elements of African culture and traditional practices that are incorporated in the day-to-day or weekly services. So it's a welcoming sort of environment where, I for one don't go to any of these churches, but being an interfaith minister, I'm certainly open to worshiping and collaborating with anyone from any faith practice or tradition. And what we should also keep in mind was that, you know, in places like Brazil and Cuba and Haiti, for example, even though, you know, the slave masters, uh, you know, forced down like a lot of maybe Christianity or other religions, but these people were able to incorporate elements of African traditional practices. So if you go to places like Cuba, you have like, you know, like the Santeria and, you know, things like that. And also like in Haiti with the Voodoo, you know, these are um, practitioners, they're Christians, their churches are Christians, obviously a church, you know, the mode of worship is Christianity, but they're heavy elements of African culture, you know, even replacing some of the saints with like African names and things like that, just to be able to, you know, continue the incorporation of African traditional practices, or you know, not to lose their own identity or culture, or to have something familiar that they can relate to in terms of, you know, their spirituality, you know. So if we have a cultural center or a worship center, you know, the problem that we're going to face, you know, would be which religion are we going to claim for that African center? Which culture, you know? So where we're claiming unity and bridging the gap and coming together, you know, so that we can progress as a people, it might be divisive, you know, unless, you know, we have a probably like a center where all types of African culture or traditional practices or spirituality or research, or, you know, you name it, you know, a center where everything happens. So let's say every Monday, we're talking of Ifa, you know, practices. On Tuesday is Voodoo, you know, on Wednesday is Santeria. So that way is open to, you know, it's like a diaspora, Africa and its diaspora, you know, the traditions and the religions and the culture of Africa in the diaspora, irrespective of who you are, where you are, you know, what you even want to learn, you can come, you can be there, sort of like an interfaith African traditional practice or spirituality center. I don't know how that's going to work, but, you know, Dr. Wale, the Royal Institute can be probably some sort of example, besides the other work that, you know, the committee has in mind. You know, we can incorporate elements of spirituality, whether it's only on Saturday, you know, every Saturday or every weekend, every 2 hours, you know, there's a teacher or a priest or a practitioner or somebody that would teach one or more of the African traditional religion, or various times people may come, you know, at 10 a.m. is Ifa worship, you know, at 12 noon, there's another spiritual, you know, session for something else, you know. So I think this is the only way, if we have a place where it's encompassing of everybody, you know, it's not, you know, it's not going to be just one culture, one African traditional religion, because when I hear of African traditional religion, I'm like, what is that? Whose religion? Which of the religions, which of the traditions are you talking about? You know, African traditional religion is very broad. You know, we have 54, 55 countries in Africa, which of the, even in one country, we have so many spiritual practices, you know. So which one are we talking about? This is where the confusion also comes for many people who are people of African descent. You know, many years ago when I first arrived in the US, and I find, you know, some Black Americans are like, they're practicing their culture. I'm like, what is your culture that you're practicing? You don't practice a culture. What are you practicing? You know, you practice things like religion. You are your culture. You be your culture. You know, you know, you showcase your heritage. What culture are you practicing? You know, and I'm like, you know, what's all this stuff like? It's an amalgamation of everything from Africa that doesn't make sense to the average African when they come. because they're from, 55, 54 different countries. And it doesn't make sense. It's like confusion. So I think we can help our brothers and sisters in actually maybe, bridging that gap. And believe it or not, there are many people of African descent that are actually well versed in all this African spirituality than the average, Dr. Wale and Dr. Remida. So there are many, 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 many people. I mean, the people from Oyotunji village, for example, they have African, is it alchemy or something, where they actually teach Ifa. I don't know any African that comes comes to the United States and wants to go and be studying Ifa or something like that. But they have, from young age to whatever, they know this stuff. And I must say, it's sort of like a shame that many people coming from the continent are actually more ashamed of their own traditions than people who are here who we say they're lost or whatever. They're way more well versed in many of these practices than we are. So I'm thinking that if we're going to put something together, it has to be a unified venture, welcoming everybody. It doesn't mean that the services or the teaching or the activities will be mixed together, but there will be different times, various days, that we would have sessions, even if it's once a month. The third Saturday of every month is dedicated to voodoo teaching or services. Every first Monday of every month is Ifa worship or teaching or something like that. I think that could work. I would like to hear what everyone else thinks about my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. You set the stage. Thank you very much. I obviously want to hear from Dr. Alfonso, but before I get to him, I want to hear from Mr. Balewa, because I think he's been patiently waiting and enjoying so much. So I want to hear what he has to say. So please unmute and share your thoughts. Make it short, please. We're closing very. Thank you.
Dr. Wale. Boy, Yabu Ojiba Udumari, Mojiba Gungun, Ojiba to all the elders in here, and I give thanks for being able to allow me to speak. I am honored to be in this call. About Assongba, Dénis, he invited me here, and I am hearing. My background is I grew up in the Benin Republic Orthodox Christian Church, Shrine of the Black Madonna under Reverend Clegg. Been in the school of thought of Wunuwupu, Nuwapu, and then I have found my home within Ifa under Oshun Golden Harvest from Chief Olode Ianifo Oshun Moremi Balewa. I am 38 years young. I live here in America, Houston, Texas. So all my life is culture. And now that I am finally becoming into the adult years of understanding and really learning the foundations of manhood as an African, here in the diaspora, away from cultural on the everyday basis. One thing I'm learning is that I study within Lukumi and within Isheshe, or traditional Ifa, because wherever we are, we have a cultural tradition, I feel. And that cultural tradition always has a mother and it always has a father. And that mother and father is Africa in many ways. I agree with Doctor is that when you hear African culture or spirituality, it's almost like a gumbo pot when it comes to the misled or the newcomer here in America. because we're already coming from a shattered place of oppressive institutionalization of religion to say, okay, you really don't, half of the Christians really don't even know the Bible. Because if you did know the Bible, it would bring you closer to Africa. We're dealing with a niggerization mentality where we are already self-afflicting oppression and the idea of self, period. So it's three things that I wanted to put a top on, especially within the ability of the center. I think it's important, like Dr. Ali said, that we are on every corner, every street. We on the back of bubble gum. We on juice. We have it all. The ability to take control of the African spiritual narrative and uprising of African culture. One thing that we've
we lost you there a little bit. We can't hear you.
That we come forth with, they use. We have to find programs where we are ahead of appropriating our culture, where we are in advancement of appropriating who we are. Beyonce came out with Black is King. So now millions of people know about Orisha only through a music industry. We have to be in the forefront of reaching out to Beyonce, lifting her up, giving her more knowledge, see who's the Baba and Iya's mother and fathers that she's dealing with. Because is she not now a reincarnation or a spiritual energy here on the planet to uplift? We have to get ahead of the narratives. As I always say, when somebody get elekes or they say they're in African spirituality, I say, okay, now you're in the army of Olodumare, because we have a different stance now, and our charge is not to convert, but to spread. And when you spread something, you shine and you emanate what you are, what you live, what you know. So we have to get in front of it. Why aren't there any Ifa chips? Why aren't there any Ifa games? Why aren't there any? Why don't we have a supersonic game? Why are we not in Roblox? Why are we not in these things? So that's the first thing. We have to infuse ourselves and take advantage of the uprise that's actually here. So in whatever walks of life that you are, that you do, put pressure on it. Second, what is really going to be important in this center, in any center, is the ability to teach people in whatever walk of life, religion, or way of life, where African principles talk about that situation. I have found it where I'm in conversations with Christians. I was walking my dog. A new neighbor came in. Hey, how you doing? He seen me with my beads on. Is that something special? So he said, well, I'm a Christian. I say, I am too. I'm a Christian too. I said, I'm a Muslim. And I told him a couple other things that I were, because as Africans and those that are in the arts of spirituality, we begin to understand that we are dealing with nature and the laws of that. So we begin to take all the film off of what is. So he was confused. What he did, he merged. Every time he talked about a situation, I told him where Ifa spoke about it. But not in a challenging way, not in a converting way, but in this discussional manner. Then I began to speak to him about things that were unequivocally a part of the cornerstone of conditioning and theology, okay, in his way of life, and then allowed him to see, oh yeah, we do this, and guess what? We've been doing it 1,000 years. I'm glad we're both doing it. So to close, get ahead as a young person and to be able to relate. Yes, we are traditional. Yes, we have order. Yes, but guess what? If you give them what they want, they'll learn to what you have to give. And I'm speaking from my own angle because it's very hard for young individuals who are coming up that are now expressing and wanting freedom, but don't want to follow order because order has not been shown to be proven right inside of religion. We have to give them a chance to show them order in the world and the way in which they live. No dupe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much there. That resonates. So we are getting close to the end of this session, but I want to give Dr. Antoine Atin Pahon. Atin Pahon, if you are able to speak, please unmute and say something quickly. And keep in mind we are really short of time. Keep it short and succinct. But we'll like to hear from you if you're able to speak. Please unmute and speak. We can't hear you yet, and if you are not able to, that's understandable. We can go to the person calling on phone number 917 ending 024. If you want to say something, your voice is very welcome. Okay. So either of you unmute and speak. Whoever speaks first gets the floor. If not, we are going to move on. Okay. If you're able to speak, just unmute and speak. If not, I will go to Dr. Alfonso Dr. Alfonso Brooks to give us an assessment of what he has heard. I think there's a whole lot on the table. I want to respond to Dr. Remy, but I know that you have lots to say here as well. So please take the floor.
It's very profound between Dr. Remy and Brother Balewa, what both said. And one of the disconnects that we're faced with in our evolution, in my humble opinion, is that too much going on, too much separation without leadership. And now people take the term leadership incorrectly, like Brother Balawa was saying, because the establishment had made it feel constrained on us. So they don't want it no more. So they feel the need to rebel against anyone that's trying to impose upon them. When if we look back in, ancient times, where leadership came with a lot of humility. Sometimes you would see the village leader maybe once a month, if ever. I mean, he just comes to give a quick piece of advice and then he's back into prayer. But that 2 words that he said kept the village for the next month. That concept of teaching has been lost. When we think of Olodumare and what it stands for, the invisible, the intangible, but omniscient, that omnipresent aspect, right? Within modern culture in the diaspora, I think there's been too much separation with the different deities. So it's too much for them to process. If you follow Muslim, they lead to Allah. You go to Hindu, they lead to Krishna. You go to Baha'i, it's to Baha'u'llah. You know what I mean? You go to Christianity, they go to Jesus and God. They figured out a way to really focus in. And within African religion and traditions, it's still too much separation because we use the word Africa too loosely in forgetting we're dealing with 54 countries with so many separations, identities, there's so much separation that's going on. Because when you think of Europe, they don't say Europe. they say they're individual countries. And then whatever their practice is, even in the Middle East, if you follow, you know, ancient Persia or Iran or whatever it is, they're very specific to identify who they are. But as our people, they box us into the continent and don't give us the room to expand. Because if you take the Nigerians and the best of that they have to offer, and then you take the best of Ghana, the best of Kenya, and you pick the countries, right? And then we bring ourselves together as a collective, then we can show the world, okay, why Ifa? Why Yoruba? Why Igbo? You understand? Because then we have done the discernment, we have done the filtering, and now here's our presentation. This is when we could say Africa. But now we're saying Africa and everyone is too separated. I mean, forget the continent. You had that, and now we're dealing with a diaspora that is way even further confused now, because all we get in the bits and pieces, and those like myself that left questioning, where we question everything, but we know that there's truth. There's truth there somewhere, but I have to keep questioning. So how long does the timeline go before you're questioning? There's a teaching they say, in ancient times, right, when you were to become a high priestess, right, you spend like 60 years studying. You're just studying alone before you could even be called a high priest. And then on year 61, when you get to be inducted now, he was like, oh, but now does your life begin? And where do you begin? And then you ask yourself now, in looking back, you did all of that to prepare yourself for this one moment right now. That does not happen today. Today's society wants everything on demand. Like they pick up their Netflix remote. Oh, I want to see this now, and I want to see all 10 chapters today. I mean, if I'm not getting all 10 chapters today, it's not good for me. I don't want it. So if they don't get the whole Yoruba today or the whole Ife today, you know what I mean? They're like lost, and they take it personal. And that on-demand culture is hurting society. Like the brother said about Beyonce and really having to find her. It's a beauty, it's a joy that she found that. And that whoever's advising her that she found, you know what, this is where I need to go. I mean, I did it myself, where I came from a long path. I've studied Kabbalah, I've studied Hindu, I've studied, Baha'i, Christian. I've studied so many of these religions, and it's so weird. The deepest impact book I ever read was Zen Master Dogen, where he taught us, it's just gonna take me 1 minute, where the gist of the story was of this young student trying to be a master and travel all over the world. And then finally, at the end of his journey, he met a cook, was a kitchen cook, and said, oh yeah, I'll see you next time. Whenever I see you again, we'll talk about it and I'll teach you something. And then when he was at the end of his journey, he couldn't find anyone. He went to rest at this temple. And resting in this temple, he decided to get something to eat. And then he saw the same cook. He's like, oh, you're the cook? Yeah. He said, yeah, I was. He said, can I get something to eat? And the cook asked him, did you find what you were looking for? And he was like, no, I couldn't find no one. Chief said, no, master. No. Then he came to find out that the cook was the master, that he just saw the regular cook carrying all the stuff all over the place. And he spent his life, and the cook told him, he said, well, you teach me now because I'm here at the temple? He's like, no, he said, all the stuff that you're looking for around, the dead knowledge, right? It's dead. It's someone's interpretation. What knowledge are you creating from your spirituality within? The ancestors will speak to you if you speak with them. And this is my understanding of my spirituality and the journey that I've been on through African spirituality. Yes, it's great that we have brick and mortar so we can break bread and learn from each other, but we also need to create that individual connection, you know what I mean, of that spirituality. Then we can have discussions like these because we are bringing something to the table, in my humble opinion. Ashe.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful as usual. Thank you very much. And I think what you have said again coincides with what Dr. Remy have said, as well as Mr. Balewa. And here are these resources, and obviously, how do we connect with it, and how do we benefit from what's existent without having to have it divide us even further into various fractions. So I think that that question really answers itself, but I will perhaps give a last word on it, just to share what I've worked on. I've been privileged to be part of, because we have solved this problem, and we've solved it in a way that we think is going to be satisfying. So I'll be glad to share that with you. But before I do so, I want to check on my brother, King Dénis. How are you doing? You've been relaxing, chilling, you know, just listening to your handiwork, enjoying. So let me put you back on the spot. How are you doing? Let's check on you quickly. We are getting close to the closing hour.
Yeah, I want some people to talk about everything, so I will come in conclusion. You guys continue.
Well, the conclusion is drawn very near. So I wanted to check on you. We are closing today at 4, so we got just about 5 minutes, a little over 5 minutes left. We have a few things here. If Dr. Antoine wants to speak, we can give you a few minutes to speak, if you're able to speak now. We called on you before, but you weren't available. Are you available now? Yes, no. Okay, that's a no for Dr. Ating Pahon. All right. So if you're still able to, maybe this startled you. I'm sorry for not wanting you before, but we'd like to hear from you if you have something to say. Obviously, if you don't have anything to say, you just want to enjoy what's been spoken about, maybe you want to digest it first, since maybe you don't feel like you're part of this discussion yet. We understand that, but you do have a few minutes if you want to speak. So we're getting to the conclusion of this. I think Dr. Remy spoke quite well about this. So did his Honorable Alfonso Brooks, to really shed a light on, you know, what's necessary, and all the rest of the speakers as well. To me, before I give it to King Dénis to have the last word, and also King Dénis would like you to give us a last, to close with a prayer as well, after your words, is that all the things that you've mentioned, whether it's the candomblé, the Santeria, the Lukumi, and those in Africa that we know is just infinite, these are resources for us. They all come with particular type of wisdom. And this wisdom serves in its own chapter and script. These are the things that we need to put together in order to create our own book, whether, you know, something that is comparative to, again, I always say the Mahabharata, something that compares to the Bible, something that compares to the Quran, and so on and so forth. In our case, we have in various capacity, in various experiences and heritage of all of these spiritual enclaves that we have, even though we might have to reach into esoteric pockets to pull the stories. But these are things that need to be written, that needs to be documented, that needs to be put together in a way that satisfies, that brings out the wisdom that which we seek. So as you're talking, you'll be able to read from a particular scripture, whether it's on Voodoo, whether it's on the Ogun heritage, or the Yemaja, or the Santeria, whatever the case may be. Those we can, I mean, this I know that there's infinite of this, yeah, in every single traditions, African tradition. They have the story, and each one comes with its own wisdom. And the whole eclectic concept comes under the premise of Ubuntu, right? So Ubuntu obviously is a Southern African language, but the concept exists, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Because of you, I am. And that is a unifying factor. We just got to give it life. We need to breathe into it and give it strength, and provide all the necessary elements to allow it to saturate. And, you know, a lot of people are working on this. And I pray that everything comes together as expected. So you can see that there's progress, and this is why the effort towards these edifices are necessary now, because we have content to fill it. And there is a huge requirement for it, that we can begin to teach the very effective and efficient principles that are inherent to us as a people. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to come together and support this program, the Voodoo Fest for the Ancient Kingdom of Dahomey, which is the Republic of Benin. I will now yield to His Royal Heritage, my brother, my friend, Sir King Dénis, to close out with a prayer, as well as give his closing remarks.
Wale, can I say last question before they close?
Make it really short. You got 30 seconds, please.
Yeah. What I was gonna ask, I was pretty much gonna ask, why whenever you tell like family members that you want to visit Africa, why do you actually get a lot of resistance? That's my last question, and that's it. Then next time.
Thank you very much for that question. Well, with the capacity vested in me in this particular program, let me quickly answer that. And I'll give anybody else another minute to answer that, just to go a little bit over. Forgive me, Sir Dénis, you just got to wait a little bit more, because this is a very, Mr. Fitzgerald Botem represents many of our young people who grapple with this type of challenges. So it's really a very good presence for us here, really a blessing for us today. And I thank him for his forthrightness, his honesty, and effort as well through the struggle. It's a struggle that young people go through in many of our communities. He is very exemplary of that. So I want us to really address that issue. Dr. Remy, even though I have something to say to this, I would ask two people. I would ask Dr. Remy, because I know you're versed in this, and I also like Dr. Alfonso to give some word of wisdom to this as well. Please prepare yourself. Dr. Remy, you go first. I hope you're prepared. Are you there?
Yeah, I didn't hear the question. Why there's a lot of resistance with who?
With African people, you know, it's like in the African family, in the diaspora, when a young man is excited about the concept of Africa, wants to explore, and goes to the parents, and you know, the parents.
That's what I'm doing.
They often dissuade that interest in the young man. You know, Africa is no good, you know, blah, 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 blah. That comes with the concept, well, you know, I don't know. There's so many things. There's so many reasons that they believe that, oh, they sold us a slave, or the people are no good. Like, you know, all of those things, or the place is dirty, or it's a shit, or I don't know, but there's infinite stuff, you know. So this young man is really challenged by that, and he wants some wherewithal reason. So if you can offer that,
Yes.
I'll be supported by Brother Brooks. Go ahead.
Yes, I think the resistance to learning African culture, or even practicing African religion by Africans, whether they're on the continent or in the diaspora, stems from colonialism. You know, the idea during colonialism that everything or anything African was not good. And there was a lot of brainwashing, you know, of people not to identify with their own culture. As a matter of fact, many people, if you look at you know, example would be like in the Congo, where people would be maimed. You know, they will cut off their hands and limbs for them practicing their tradition. You know, and it's this case of identity crisis that the African person, whether on the continent or in Africa, whether products of colonialism or products of transatlantic slave trade or racism or you name it, has to do with the psychology of the Black experience, the experience that the Black person has faced, whether on the continent or outside of it, or in the diaspora or wherever around the world. Is the psychology of, you're no good, Black is ugly, whatever is African is, evil. Even this voodoo that we're talking about, when you tell many people, come to a conference that we're going to be discussing about voodooism, they're like, oh, black magic, you'll be killing people, drinking blood and stuff like that. But if you look at the, let's say the Catholic Church, for example, I mean, I don't want to take too much of the time today, but just a short example of, if we have comparison of sacrifice or blood or something like that, you can compare those types of sacrifices to drinking blood or shedding blood or, wine or whatever. And, so like I mentioned earlier, how we can continue with a new dimension of African spirituality, to have this respect for the African, whether you're on the continent, in the diaspora or wherever you may be, is to have a new or to devise new methodology of practicing African spirituality and African traditional religion. So for example, if we had blood sacrifices and that's scary for many people, then let's look at more innovative ways, more ways that we can begin to, write this religion for future generations. I know one of my colleagues here said that innovation is not the word because this exists already, but maybe new methodology, a different way of doing things, a different way of the Black person to look at themselves. We're talking 400 years here of return, and we're still talking, Black identity crisis. The Black psychology and the identity crisis should be on the forefront of what Black people themselves need to use their own hand in resolving. It shouldn't be a conversation of we were told that we were ugly, we were told that we were less, we were told that nothing about us is good. I mean, how many countries in Africa, pretty much every country in Africa is independent. We have independent-minded leaders. They may not be, good on leadership, but, there's so many people that, can start teaching African culture, which many people are beginning to do. But unfortunately, many of us are ashamed, maybe because of our socioeconomic status, and we feel that, the African culture or tradition is not something to learn about, which I don't agree with.
Thank you. I want us to make it short. You made your point so eloquently.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. I understand. No, thank you very much. I had to. We are on time, so we need to be closing soon. And I want to also give Brother Brooks some moment just to chime in on this young man, because I believe you understand exactly also what his challenges are. Please make it short because we're running out of time. Thank you.
No problem. Brother Bontemps, you're faced with two challenges. All right. Your first challenge is there is no one, not your mom, not your dad, not your grandmother, right, can ever stop you from questioning life. You have an individual journey that's between you and your God. Whoever you choose is your God. That's your individual journey between you and your God. Your spirit will forever search because you came here to accomplish something great. And wherever it needs you to go, it's going to send you. And there's no one that can stop you from getting there, period. That's just what it is. As it relates to your challenges you have with Haiti and Haiti, and you were questioning a lot of different things as it relates to Haiti, right? Haiti has some serious segregation and separation challenges because of the conditioning. But you have an individual responsibility to choose, not what someone told you to do. You have an individual responsibility. I know much of Haiti. I know Haiti has a deep Christian conditioning, but there's also a deep racine conditioning. I am a follower of Bookman Experience and Ram and all of these guys, so I understand the culture quite profoundly, but never ever try to belittle the challenges that they overcome as a people. They've overcome so much as a people, and never let anyone tell you otherwise. Not your mom, not your dad, not your minister, no one. You must feel that within yourself, because all the questions that you're asking here in the chat as well, these are questions that your spirit are asking you. Don't be afraid to ask them. Don't be scared to want to know or to venture into the world. People tell me, I was born in a ghetto. I tell people that every day. I'm a ghetto youth. I've traveled the globe. I've been fortunate to travel the globe. And the first place I want to go is to be amongst the people. I don't care. I've been to many countries in Africa. And where I want to go is amongst the people. Because that's my people with, you know, they have a saying that they say, I'll cut off after this. There's a saying that say, you know what? Our people know our people. We can see it. We see it in the way they walk, their swag, the way they know. We know if that's a tourist or we know if that's one of ours. We just let them be. So I leave that there for you, my brother. I give thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think we did some service to the young man. I just want to add that your parents are very valuable to you. So we don't want you to be at odds with their wishes or interests, but at least be able to have a rational conversation with them that you are, you know, every parent understand the process and their intention is always to protect you, but they are trying to protect something from something that they don't know about. So you are able to not confront but explain, if you will, especially to your parents here in this case, that you believe in knowledge and you want to seek and you wish to know, and that maybe there is something you can find in there that could help them as well in their own process. So I think you need to be considerate of family and the notion of that. I wish you well, and I thank you very much for participating in this. We'll now yield to His Royal Heritage, who is responsible for our gathering and for celebrating this awesome day of the Voodoo Festival of Benin. We are so thankful and proud of you as a son of the soil, of the blood, of the people, and thank you again for the effort, for the vision, and for this wonderful day. Don't forget to give us a prayer with your closing remarks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think Rama, I think everybody is always good to it's better to speak your own language, but we are in America and most of people here, they speak English. But I will probably do the prayer later in my native language. And the prayer gonna help everybody and help me myself. When I listen to the brother from Haiti, I just think that we need to do more and speak a little. That's what I think, and I will tell everybody that we do need every one of us to put our hand together and do something for our community. What we're doing about the Festival Voodoo, we are talking about culture, temple center, is not just for Benin. I can give you one example. When I was in Benin last month, it was a town called Sakete. I like to give example because I experienced myself. You know, what things that I see myself, I'd rather give that example. The city called Sakete is about 20 miles from Nigeria and close to Togo and close to Niger. All this is close around. We have some religion called Voodoo. And Voodoo, if you look at it, everything comes from Asian Kemek. So the Africa have what culture? What Voodoo, what culture they have is Voodoo. If we go anywhere, it doesn't matter what they can call different language. Our culture, where we have before the colonial, anybody come, is Voodoo. All Africa. So the example that I keep is that Benin is the only one who keep the really tradition. I can tell you the experience for Sakete. Sakete was one of a belief that they do every year called Oro. Oro, I think, is a Nigerian language because Benin they speak Yoruba they speak Fon, they speak Ewe, and they speak Fulani. So Oro is something that every year we do a ceremony and it come on. When it come, there is no woman outside. So the religion people, so Christian, Catholic, Muslim, or the other religion, they have a problem about that. They say, what can they do in Benin? And every time this ceremony happening, there is no woman outside. So this year, they decide that they're not going to do it because beside the pandemic, also all the religion people could question this. The lady get up and make a strike and say they want it to happen. So it happened again this year. So we have something that we need to think that is African. They have nothing to do with other, either Benin, Nigeria or the other country. It's African. When this temple come here, what we're gonna have there? Everybody, American, Benin, Nigeria, everywhere in the world, they're gonna go there and learn about their own culture. If we look at back in history a little bit, I remember when the colonialists come to Africa, the Africans have their own tradition. When they come, the missionary come, they come with the missionary and they come with the army. So when so a lot of people were talking about selling slaves. No kingdom sells slavery in Africa. No, none of them. So what these things are happening, for us to make a change, we have to look at the other people. Look at Israel, for example. When you go to the temple, you see things, a culture from their own people. They have people who go teach them the culture. So when we have this temple, we're going to have those kind of Dr. Wale, more people, Alfonso. A lot of people are going to come there and experience themselves. And there was a brother Bajilo from Houston, Texas, was saying something today. This guy was born in Benin, in America. He was born here, and he's attached to his culture, who is the African culture. So I want us to think that there's a miseducation of our own people. Our own enemy is not the outsider, it's ourselves. If we don't sit down and love ourselves and start do things for ourselves, I think we're not going nowhere. We need to work. We need to work. We need to work. I said that 3 times. In working, we have to work. We have to stop blaming other people. We have to start blaming ourselves. And spiritually believe we need to start thinking, working hard for our own self. So in the name of all the ancestors for my country, even though we don't have the committee today, we can, with Dr. Wale, we can find another day to have another meeting, especially just for that, to form a committee together. It doesn't matter where you come from, and have at least one of the heavily African culture in America that everybody can come and sit down and contribute. Thank you very much for make a little comment on that. And if you guys are ready, or if anybody have anything to say, or I can just go ahead and do the prayer, then you let me know. Just go ahead and do the prayer. Okay. Oh, I'm so happy. So when you are very happy, you like to go back to your hometown. So I would like to do the prayer in hometown. So because I'm very happy about this meeting, Mechilemi, Medo, Afrique, Medo, Asie, Medo, Benin, Medo, Amérique, le filet bidio, Mau, Mehoko Mitole, Tommy Tokuo, no Mito Kuo, Novi Mito Kuo, Novi Mito Wakan Monobeji, May Ulinica Mono, May Unicam, May Edo Filet Bikuyo, do your side on Mehoko Itole, and Nikeklambo, Boze Ache, that we do Milome, Boni Mini, Huzuta Miton Boni Mini, Midesi Becon, Minili Midesi Becon, Uwan, Dupo Buzalo, Dupo Mina, Blomido, Boni Mimado, Mede, Mini Waso. Bo medio do waso medio do ewani toton ewani noviton mele bikuyo on the name of all the ancestors. Everybody's blessed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Thank you.
Let's do this again very soon, Dr. Wale.
Thank you.
Dabo.